I never expected a simple school bus stop would lead to police involvement, legal battles, and the downfall of the most feared woman in our neighborhood. But when the HMA president began threatening my children, I had no choice but to fight back, and what followed shocked everyone. If you've ever dealt with an overzealous HOA or faced injustice in your own community, this story will hit home. Like the video, subscribe for more real stories, and stick around, because the ending will leave you speechless. Daniel never imagined he'd find himself locked in a war of wills with the president of his neighborhood HOA, but that's exactly where he was. 5 years ago, he moved his family to Sycamore Heights, a pristine suburb with top-rated schools, manicured lawns, and a homeowners association known for its meticulous rules. He, his wife, and their 2 children, 10-year-old Emma and 8-year-old Liam, had hoped for peace and stability. What they got instead was Karen Whitfield. The previous homeowners had warned them with nervous laughs. Karen ran the HOA like a queen ruling her kingdom. Daniel thought they were exaggerating. He was wrong. For years, they followed every regulation to the letter. The 17-page landscaping document sat in a kitchen drawer, referenced regularly. They never missed the 6 p.m. trash bin deadline, never installed unapproved decorations, and ensured their Christmas lights were taken down before the deadline struck. But everything shifted at the start of the new school year. The school district rerouted buses, placing a new stop at the corner of Daniel's property. On the first crisp morning of September, he walked his kids there along with 5 other children. Parents chatted, kids laughed, and the air felt full of new beginnings, until a silver Mercedes screeched to a halt beside them. The tinted window rolled down, revealing Karen's perfectly styled blonde bob and tight-lipped frown. "This is not an authorized gathering area," she barked, eyes narrowing. "You all need to disperse." Daniel stepped forward, keeping his tone level. "Good morning, Karen. This is the new district-designated bus stop. They sent out notices last month." Her expression darkened. "I received no such notice. And as HMA president, all changes in the community require my approval. Children yelling before 8 a.m. violates Section 12, Paragraph 4 of our bylaws." Daniel checked his watch. "The bus comes in 5 minutes. We'll be gone right after. They're just waiting for transport." "Not my problem," she snapped, waving a manicured hand. "Move them or face the consequences." As if on cue, the bus arrived, ending the confrontation for the moment. Karen drove away with a final glare and a chilling promise: "This isn't over." That afternoon, Daniel returned home to find a violation notice taped to his front door, $75 fine for organizing an unauthorized gathering. He scoured the bylaws and found no mention of bus stops. That evening, he sent a courteous email to the HMA board, attaching documentation from the school district. But Karen wasn't done. The next morning, Daniel showed up early with printed copies of everything ready. Her Mercedes appeared right on schedule. She stepped out wearing a beige pantsuit that screamed control, tablet in hand. "You're now in violation for a second day," she announced, holding up the device like a badge. "Which doubles the fine." Daniel handed her the documents. "There's no rule against waiting at a school bus stop. This is public property. The board has been informed." Karen's smile vanished. "You think this is about a bus stop? It's about respect for authority. You should have consulted me. It's not on my property. It's a public corner. The school doesn't need your approval." Karen leaned in, her voice a venomous whisper. "You brought disorder to a peaceful neighborhood. Maybe this place isn't right for families like yours." Before he could reply, she was gone. But the message lingered like a storm cloud over what should have been an ordinary morning. The tension hadn't even begun to settle before it escalated again. That same afternoon, Daniel returned home to find not one, but 3 new violation notices pinned to his front door. The charges? Improper lawn edging, unapproved garden border stones, and most absurd of all, aggressive posturing in a community common area. The message was clear: Karen was not backing down. Daniel made a decision. He would attend the next HOA board meeting and confront the issue directly. He wasn't interested in conflict, but protecting his children came first. At the meeting, the room was filled with polite small talk and fake smiles. Karen sat at the front, her expression unreadable. When Daniel brought up the school bus issue during the open forum, she leaned back in her chair and dismissed him with a practiced smirk. "This is simply one homeowner's misunderstanding of established community protocols," she said smoothly. "There are rules for a reason." Daniel looked around the room. Not one board member challenged her. It was then he realized the depth of her grip on the neighborhood. This wasn't about the bus stop. Karen thrived on control, and he had threatened that. The following week, things only grew worse. Karen began photographing his home multiple times a day, sometimes circling in her car slowly like a patrolling guard. She emailed other parents, suggesting they avoid the disruptive corner and drive their children to an approved drop-off point. Most disturbing of all was a certified letter Daniel received that Friday. It stated that the HOA was considering legal action against him for creating a public nuisance and potentially harming community property values. By Monday, the situation crossed a dangerous line. Daniel had an early meeting, so his wife took the children to the bus stop. When she returned, her face was pale, her hands shaking. "Karen came up to the kids," she said, voice trembling. "She told them they were trespassing, that they could be removed by the authorities." Liam started crying. He thinks he's going to jail for waiting for the bus. Daniel's stomach dropped. That wasn't just intimidation. That was harassment. That night, he installed a discreet security camera on their front porch. It had a clear view of the bus stop, well within legal rights according to both state law and the HOA's own bylaws, which ironically encouraged home security installations. The next morning, Daniel stayed inside, phone in hand, watching the camera feed as his wife walked the kids out. Karen arrived like clockwork, her SUV rolling to a calculated stop. She emerged, crossed the street, and approached the children while his wife helped a neighbor's kindergartner with a dropped lunchbox. Karen's voice rang out clear through the camera's microphone. "This is your final warning. You're not allowed to congregate here. I've called the authorities. Your parents will be held responsible." Liam, still shaken from the day before, began to cry again. But Emma, brave and steady, stepped forward. "My dad said this is where the school told us to wait." Karen bent down, her tone dropping to a cold, quiet menace. "Your dad doesn't make the rules here, I do. And if you keep breaking them, bad things will happen. I know where you live." Daniel stood up, heart pounding. That was it. He dialed the non-emergency police line, explaining that an adult was threatening children at a public school bus stop. By the time he walked outside, a patrol car was already pulling up. Karen stood in the middle of the sidewalk, mid-rant, trying to spin a very different story. "These children have been damaging property and making excessive noise," she said to the officer, voice syrupy and concerned. "As HMA president, I have a responsibility to act." Daniel stepped in, calm but firm. "Officer, I think this will explain everything," he said, holding out his phone. The officer watched the video silently. Karen's face paled as her own voice echoed from the recording, threatening kids, naming houses, whispering intimidation. "That's taken out of context," she sputtered. "Recording me like that, it's an invasion of privacy." "Ma'am," the officer replied evenly, "there's no expectation of privacy in a public space. And threatening minors, under any context, isn't acceptable." The officer separated everyone and took statements. Before leaving, he gave Karen one final instruction: avoid the bus stop. But Daniel knew deep down, she wasn't finished. Karen didn't take the officer's warning as a deterrent. If anything, it seemed to fuel her obsession. The next morning, her silver Mercedes cruised past Daniel's house 3 separate times before 9 a.m. By lunch, another violation notice appeared, this time citing unauthorized mailbox flag positioning. The next day, it was improper spacing between fence posts, followed by an official warning that the white shade of their home's exterior trim did not match the approved palette. The paint had been there for years. Daniel began documenting everything: photos, timestamps, saved emails, and camera footage. It wasn't just a disagreement anymore, it was targeted harassment. When his wife called to say Karen had followed her from the grocery store to their driveway, that was the final straw. Daniel returned to the police station and filed a formal harassment complaint. The officer who took his statement listened carefully, nodding at each incident. "This is starting to show a pattern," he said. "You should consider applying for a restraining order." And Daniel did exactly that. Within 48 hours, a temporary restraining order was granted, prohibiting Karen from making any contact with the family or coming within 100 feet of their property, or their children. Daniel felt a wave of relief. Finally, there was a clear boundary she could not legally cross. But Karen couldn't help herself. Just 3 days later, she broke the order. That morning, Daniel let his wife walk the kids to the bus stop while he reviewed emails inside. Then his phone lit up. The camera feed showed Karen standing once again on the corner, berating the children with her usual speech about rules and respect. But this time, she didn't notice the 2 police officers arriving from behind. "Ma'am, step away from the children," one of them said firmly. Karen turned, startled. "I'm not doing anything wrong. These kids are loitering, disturbing the peace." "You violated a restraining order," the officer interrupted. "You're under arrest." Karen's eyes widened in disbelief as the cuffs were placed on her wrists. "You can't do this to me. I'm the HMA president. I'm in charge here." "Not today, you're not," the officer said calmly, guiding her toward the squad car. Neighbors came out of their homes, drawn by the flashing lights and shouting. Some watched in stunned silence, others filmed the scene on their phones. Karen, red-faced and sputtering, was placed in the back seat of the cruiser, still protesting. That afternoon, Daniel received calls from 3 other residents, people who'd once stood by quietly, thanking him. One woman admitted Karen had fined her for a wind chime that made excessive spiritual noise. Another confessed she had been too afraid to speak up after Karen sent her threatening emails about a birdbath. That weekend, the HMA board called an emergency meeting. Daniel attended, though he hadn't planned to speak. But this time, he didn't need to. One by one, other homeowners stepped forward with their own experiences, stories of intimidation, bogus fines, even tampering with mailbox locks. By the end of the meeting, the board voted unanimously to remove Karen as president effective immediately. No one protested. No one defended her. For the first time in years, Sycamore Heights felt like it could breathe again. But there was still one final consequence awaiting Karen, one that would hit her where it hurt most. Karen's arrest made more than just neighborhood gossip, it hit the local news. A short segment aired on the evening broadcast featuring footage of her being led to the patrol car, handcuffed, flanked by 2 officers. The headline read, "HOA President Arrested for Harassing Children at Bus Stop." Daniel didn't even know the story had run until a co-worker mentioned it with wide eyes and a low whistle. By Monday, the fallout had spread to Karen's professional life. She worked for a real estate firm that specialized in luxury properties, a business that relied heavily on reputation. Within hours of the broadcast, her company issued a statement placing her on indefinite unpaid leave pending internal review. It was the final blow to her manufactured image. The polished, power-suited woman who once struck fear with a glare and a clipboard was unraveling in front of the community she once ruled. Daniel saw her only once after the arrest. She was collecting personal items from the now-locked HOA office. As he passed with his kids on their way to the corner, their eyes met briefly. Her face twisted with humiliation and fury. "This isn't over," she muttered, just loud enough for him to hear. "You've destroyed everything I built." He didn't flinch. "No, Karen. You did that all by yourself." The restraining order remained in place, and with her removal from office, the notices stopped. The neighborhood, once gripped by her iron rule, began to exhale. The new interim board introduced changes immediately, a review of the fining system, an anonymous complaint process, and community town halls. People showed up, eager to speak, to be heard, to be part of something other than fear. One woman who had lived in Sycamore Heights for over a decade, stood up and said what everyone else had been thinking: "We let this go on too long because no one wanted to be the first to push back. But Daniel did. And it changed everything." But the legal process was still in motion. When the court date arrived, Daniel sat quietly at the back of the courtroom. Karen appeared in a conservative black dress, hair pulled tightly back, makeup subdued. Gone was the confident posture and icy gaze. Her expression was one of disbelief, like someone who still thought this couldn't be happening. The charges were clear: harassment, violation of a restraining order, and endangerment of minors. The video evidence was played in full. The courtroom was silent as Karen's own words echoed off the walls. Her threats, her obsession with power, her whispered warning to a 10-year-old girl. Karen didn't speak. Her attorney did all the talking, but nothing could erase what had already been recorded, what had been seen. When the judge read the sentence, $5,000 in fines, 40 hours of community service, and mandatory anger management classes. Karen didn't cry. At first. But as she sat down, the weight of everything finally hit her. Her composure cracked. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her mouth opened in a silent gasp of rage and disbelief. The woman who once ruled Sycamore Heights like a self-appointed monarch was now just another name on a docket, another cautionary tale. Daniel watched without satisfaction. Not because he felt sorry for her, but because justice wasn't supposed to feel triumphant. It was supposed to feel balanced. And in that moment, balance had finally returned. In the weeks that followed, life in Sycamore Heights settled into a rhythm Daniel had almost forgotten was possible. Mornings at the bus stop became peaceful again. No glares, no threats, just sleepy kids with backpacks and coffee-sipping parents making small talk. The tension that had hung over the corner like a storm cloud had lifted. The new HOA board, now led by a soft-spoken but fair neighbor named Marissa, worked to undo the culture of fear Karen had left behind. The fining system was overhauled, absurd restrictions were tossed out, and a transparency policy was implemented. People who had once avoided meetings now volunteered for committees. Gardens bloomed again, some with unapproved flowers, and nobody cared. But the emotional fallout at Daniel's home took time to heal. Liam, still wary, often asked if the angry lady would come back. Emma, though brave, had stopped drawing outside or playing in the yard alone. Karen's shadow had been long. One evening, Daniel sat his kids down. He showed them the court documents, the final ruling, and reminded them of something simple but powerful. Bullies only win when no one stands up. You both were so brave. You helped stop something much bigger than just a few rules. Emma nodded quietly. Liam hugged him without saying a word. That moment, more than any court verdict or fine, reminded Daniel why he had fought so hard. Karen's name slowly faded from daily conversations, but her legacy remained a cautionary tale. It wasn't about strict rules or community upkeep. It was about what happens when authority is used as a weapon instead of a responsibility. Months later, a new family moved into the neighborhood. During a welcome barbecue, Daniel overheard someone mention how peaceful and friendly the area was. One parent said, "I heard there used to be some trouble with the HOA." Marissa smiled gently and replied, "There was. But we've changed. Thanks to the right people standing up at the right time." Daniel glanced at his wife, who gave him a knowing look. Their fight had been exhausting, invasive, and sometimes scary, but it mattered. As the sun dipped behind the rooftops, kids ran across the grass, laughter echoing into the warm air. No one barked orders. No photos were taken. No citations were issued. And across the street, the corner where the battle had started stood quiet. Just a simple patch of sidewalk and curb, now part of the daily routine. It didn't need signs or plaques. That bus stop had become something far more meaningful, a symbol that even in the most rule-bound places, justice could still find a foothold. And in the heart of Sycamore Heights, peace wasn't just an idea anymore. It was finally a reality. Have you ever had a nightmare HOA experience? Share your story in the comments below. Let's expose the worst ones together. And don't forget to check out our next story about a birthday party that ended in handcuffs. Link in the description.